Should we change the UDP policy approach? And I'm going to split this into two. The first one is the provision of gardens. And, for example, looking at community gardens and play space, I think we've certainly talked about play space here tonight for formal or informal play. Should we be changing the UDP approach to gardens and the provision of those? And perhaps if Helena could just say what the approach is at the moment.
Sorry.
We're just grabbing the paperwork.
Okay, we currently ensure that large housing developments provide sufficient garden space for the residents and also meet the need of community facilities as well. So that's the overall approach that we have.
Okay.
I think, actually, just to add on that the UDP approach isn't very specific, and I think we're asking whether we should have more specific policies in terms of possibly thresholds, what type of facilities. It's just because it's more of a sort of encouragement. There's nothing actually there that you can actually make someone provide it. So in what circumstances should those sort of facilities always be provided, and what should those facilities be? That's the sort of, that's where we're going with this question.
Thank you.
Could I straightway put in a plea for allotments? Because, with all that's going on, it seems to me that some of the young and some of the elderly could actually get together and do a number of things like that. And it wouldn't really need supervision and health and safety and all those other issues. It seems quite a useful thing to think about. If you look at what's going on in Sheffield and other places like that, I would have thought there was sort of really some lessons that Westminster could bring to the table.
My understanding is that's even going on in Church Street. I understand there's a programme up there relating to community gardening and youth. And Victoria as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
We haven't quite got allotments. I mean, there's sort of other things, but it does. The cry that I hear at the moment is for allotments in sites that have been flattened and are not going to probably be brought into use for several years now. And I don't know what the practicalities are of, the Middlesex Hospital site or any other big area, which. If one looks at the allotments in St James Park, with little windows so people can look in and see what it is, it seems to me that if we have any leverage to bring those big spaces into use, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
I think in the context of allotments, on the surface they seem like a good idea and that it's a very laudable point, but my experience of allotments is that they're quite space hungry, and they are used by individuals, not the community. And if somebody's running their own allotment, there are boundary issues and there are space issues, and it can end up being a very closed off space when people aren't tending the allotment. And I'm not sure. I think there are better ways to use the rare resource of space in Westminster than allotments, which tend to be a bit of a pseudo private use of an open space rather than a truly public use.
Okay, thank you. I mean, there is a broader idea of community gardens, which is probably not that well defined, but perhaps that might be where, we've got intergenerational groups who work on a piece of land together, and that land's not used for other purposes. So that might be one alternative. Thank you for that point. Okay, yes.
Is that the community space that's available is available for everybody, and you don't have these games cages that are locked, and a resident has a key and doesn't let it's not used because the resident hasn't unlocked it. And also, if we're going to have community gardens, that they really are community gardens, and we make an effort to bring everybody within that community to use it.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, yeah.
Hi, I'm just looking at this, that I think it comes back to the same thing. You've got a lot of competing priorities always when it comes to any community facilities, and it comes down to planning to determine what that, where you end up going with that. And I think it's coming back to the point of a kind of a strategy that's a broader view and that looks at the needs of each community area, so that it doesn't mean that, you know, you've lost on that one, so therefore you've got to get your comments in on another one. It's kind of understanding the process that everybody has to go through, and what determines priority requirements, and therefore how can service areas or how can, you know, community users actually represent themselves, or how can all of that be coordinated to go forward when you're going through the process.